This episode of Midlife Repurposed is dropping on the week of Valentine's Day. And I thought I would go back to some audio I recorded when my husband and I had been married for 28 years. We're now married for 35 years. And I would love to listen to myself and see if I still think the same way after another 7 years of marriage and more midlife. So come on inside and we'll do a little bit of analysis. Welcome to Midlife Repurposed. If you're craving inspiration, practical tips, and a renewed sense of purpose, you're in the right place. Here, we embrace the messy, uncertain, and sometimes downright challenging turns of midlife with a dose of humor and an unwavering belief that there's treasure to be found even in the tough stuff. I'm your host, Michelle Rayburn, an author who's passionate about uncovering hope in the most unexpected places. Let's repurpose this season of life together. Hey there, friends. Welcome to another episode of Midlife Repurposed. One of the things that I've been doing is looking at some of the things that I produced years ago when I started podcasting. I actually started this podcast in 2018, and it was called Life Repurposed. And over time, my focus changed a bit. I started to look at some lighthearted approaches to midlife, look at some serious approaches to midlife. And I realized that I wanted to change the name to Midlife Repurposed so that I could really speak to a more specific audience. I've been in midlife for a while. I'm not even sure the official age that midlife begins, but I'm 55. I've been an empty nester for quite a while now. My kids left home when I was still in my 40s and started college. And so I was kind of a young empty nester, and my husband and I married after being high school sweethearts. We married when I was 20 and he was 23. We really didn't know a lot about anything when we got married. We were really just kids trying to find our way. We had started dating when I was 16. And so we've just learned along the way from making lots of mistakes, learning how to communicate better, learning how to fight better, learning how to love better, and then learning to stop comparing ourselves to other people. In 2020, we released a book called Classic Marriage, Staying in Love as Your Odometer Climbs. And it was me writing some of our stories, and then I read my chapters out loud to my husband and then took notes of his comments that he had to say about what I had written. And it's not meant to be like, it's not a counselor's guide to marriage or anything. It's just an everyday couple learning how to handle the things that we go through in marriage and comparing it to classic truck because my husband loves classic trucks and just how you keep it going. You fix it up, it breaks down, you fix it up again. So that's how marriage has been for us. So I thought it would be fun to listen to some audio from almost 7 years ago and just see what's happened, because I don't know about you, but I change a lot as time goes by. And so sometimes I'm scared to actually listen to things I said before because my mind has really changed on that. So I'm going to share some audio that was really not of the quality that I use for my audio anymore. And I'm going to try to fix it as best I can to improve the quality, because those early episodes of the podcast were just recorded on my phone. I just sat down, some of them I videoed, and I did a YouTube component of it. And for others, I just talked into my phone. So the quality wasn't so great, but I really want to hear my reaction to hearing it for the first time. So here we go. This could be interesting. So buckle in. You're right alongside me here. I'm going to talk about the secrets to a long marriage based on friendship. I'm going to give you a couple of free printable, downloadable resources that you can use that would be for wedding shower games or for at a wedding. I will have these freebies available, but I want to cut in here to explain why I had them. I think I was recording this the week before our oldest son got married. And we had been involved in wedding showers and wedding planning and everything. And so along with the episode, I created some freebies for shower games and stuff like that. So you will find those in the Substack notes as well. I will update the links and give you those in case you're also planning a wedding and just want some freebies.
If you are a mom of all boys, then I'm giving you a shout out because you know what it's like to wait for girls to join your family. And if you're a mom of a boy at all, you know what it's like to just wait for that moment when he finds his special someone. I've just been really thinking about all things wedding. And one of the things that has come to mind for me is that it really isn't about the wedding, it's about the marriage. Sometimes we get really caught up in thinking about the wedding and we forget that the marriage is the important part.
I'd say, if anything, the advancements of Pinterest and other social media platforms, including Instagram especially, have even amplified the fact that people think more about the wedding and the photography and the decorations and multiple parties ahead of time and, getting engaged years ahead, because they're thinking about the wedding and how they can pay for that and really not about the marriage. So let's see what I thought about that 7 years ago.
Years ago, when my kids were little, I used to help people coordinate weddings. I was the wedding singer, and I was also a decorator, and I did some of the sales of invitations and stuff like that. And so I got to work with a lot of brides. Now, some of them were wonderful to work with, and some of them were a little bit of a challenge because they were really focused on the wedding day, but they weren't focused at all on their relationship or on the marriage. And so it was actually not surprising for me to find out that some of them over the years did not make it. It's a sad statistic, I think, but it's true. So what happens is we get focused on all the details and making the day perfect, and we forget that the relationship is so important. The long term, the future, what's coming ahead. So there's this romantic notion of the wedding and getting everything right and going on Pinterest and getting all the ideas and all that kind of stuff. But then it's, a few years into it, life changes. So for me, I got married at age 20. I met Phil when I was 15, started dating when I was 16, and 4 years later we got married. 3 years after that, we had our first son, and 2 years later, we had our second son. And so by the age of 25, I was a young mom at home, having left my career as a registered nurse, and I was staying home with my kids. This was tough because there were days when I felt like all I did was take care of little people, and even though I only had 2 of them, it's hard for me. I'm not the greatest with little tiny people.
In those 7 years, I have since become a grandmother to 4, with 2 more on the way. And I can't say that I'm really any better with groups of little people. I love my grandchildren dearly, but I'm still not great with littles.
There were some long days. I feel like in the middle of that, maybe Phil and I lost the us a little bit, where it was so focused on caring for little ones and the schedule that they were on, taking care of runny noses and fevers and all the kind of things that little ones bring along. And there just wasn't time for us to spend together, especially if you have careers and you have a lot of other things going on in your life. You know what this is like. And so what happens sometimes is when we get in the middle of that, we aren't feeling all the feels that we did on the day we got married. And so I've seen so many people abandon their relationship because they're going through this difficult time where they aren't sure where their friendship and their relationship is. And I want to tell you that, I want to encourage you really to stick it out, because there are rewards for staying friends for a long time.
Something that is a lot more in my awareness now than it was back then is the words like stick it out and talking about staying together always should come with a caveat, because not everybody's in a healthy relationship where healing can even take place, and not everything can be fixed with counseling. And so I would say that in midlife, I'm a little bit wiser about the fact that there isn't always this Pollyanna outlook for every marriage and every relationship. It does take 2 people committed to that friendship for it to be able to heal. So even though my husband and I went through some really tough patches where we just didn't feel like great friends and we were sort of at each other a bit, we were in a healthy relationship where we respected each other. And so if you're not, I'm sorry that that's your reality. And I want you to know that I see that, and I'm not trying to prescribe something for you.
Of life, I would say there were some ups and downs where I don't know that Phil and I were the best of friends. We were at each other sometimes with who's going to take which kid where and who's going to handle this responsibility. But yet in the middle of that, we had some good times. It's just that it would have been so easy for us to decide to just quit and move on. And then what happens? You move on and you start the whole thing all over again with somebody else, and you find out you're just not that much happier. So there are 3 things that I want to share with you that I think really helped us through those times. And they all start with C.
I guess I liked alliteration. I still do. I also think I was gearing up for a 3-point sermon, so let's see how it goes.
The first one is connected. I think it is so important that we stay connected. So whether it's just finding some time to get out and spend time with just the 2 of us and go out on a date, or for us when the kids were little, it was finding weekends when we could go away and we could just leave the kids with a grandparent and spend some time together reconnecting. So connected, it's so important to keep your hearts connected.
I'm not going to disagree with that one at all. It is still the same. And we dedicate time every year, and sometimes twice a year if we can, to just get away from our everyday life and go up to Lake Superior and unplug and stay at a condo there right on the water and really focus on friendship, just going for walks, taking some time to read books and rest. We've also been working on being a little more intentional about our connection in our everyday life. And so there are some times where we're both going to go about something in the evening, like my husband's going to go out to the garage and I'm going to work on something in my office in the evening, but we stop and connect over a meal. And I don't even cook that meal all the time. Sometimes it's that we each grab some leftovers that we're interested in eating, or we make a pizza. I eat gluten-free, so I make mine, he makes his, whatever. But it's really about just those few moments of being intentional, sitting at the table together and talking about the day. Let's see what the second C was.
Number 2, the other C, is covenant. This is such an important part of a relationship because for us, marriage is more than a piece of paper. We stood in front of God and made a commitment to each other. And this is a covenant in that we both agreed that we were going to, first of all, put God first, and then our relationship was united under Him. And so because of that, for us, our commitment is really based on that covenant. So it's more than just, hey, I don't like you anymore, let's walk away. It's, oh, let's work this out because we are really committed to each other.
2 years after I recorded that, I did end up going into a little bit more detail in our classic marriage book on the difference between a commitment and a covenant. And so I won't go into that here, but it's a different level when you're promising with God as part of your circle and saying that I'm making this commitment not only to my spouse, but also to God. And for some people, I think that it's a challenge because if you got married in a church and you have had some struggles in your relationship, you know that getting married and having faith be part of your marriage journey is not always the thing that keeps you together. And I think I had a simpler explanation of that probably 7 years ago and even 5 years ago when I wrote Classic Marriage, where I've seen more people struggle because they have been in a relationship where the church has actually hidden some of the abuse instead of helped. And again, this is a small percentage, but I want to address it because it's super important for us to know that when we're in a faith community and we're among people who have committed in covenant relationships with each other to their marriages, it does not mean those marriages are without troubles. And not even mean that they're without some really toxic troubles. And so in the name of covenant, I believe now that we can't just cover up some of the things that are happening. And so I would say that's the one thing that has shifted in my perspective. It hasn't changed my own marriage personally, but it's changed my outlook on other marriages. And so if you're in midlife and you're really struggling, know that you are not alone and know that there are not any simple answers that will just fix everything. It's complicated, and I see that it's complicated. For others who are listening, if you have been just kind of been happy with sort of a a marriage that looks like a shell of what you would like it to be, but you know you have the potential and you know you have the commitment, I encourage you to come back to focusing on the covenant between the two of you, that you made this promise at a deep level in front of God, and really look at some solutions for how you can take a different route from where you're headed right now, because you can see that there's hope and you can see that your relationship is salvageable. And for those who are in a really great place with your marriage right now, I encourage you to reach out to other couples, especially those who are going through those empty nest years. If you're in midlife right now and you know somebody who's just approaching it and they've been struggling because they've had all these busy things going on with the kids and now they're suddenly about to be alone with each other, make a point of developing those friendships more, reaching out and being a resource for other couples, because that's also something that's very encouraging in our marriage journey, is to have other couples who will encourage us and inspire us. Well, let's find out what the third C is.
And the third one is communication. This is something that I feel like has improved over the years for us, and it wasn't the best at first. Sometimes there's this fear of saying what you really need to say, and sometimes we can't figure out how to do it in a kind way. And over the years, we've learned how to communicate. I'm not happy, or that hurt me, the thing you said or did, or to communicate, I wasn't really thinking the thing you thought I was thinking. So much of the miscommunication actually comes from assuming we know what the other person is thinking. And then we find out later that's not even close to what they were thinking. And so communication has been really important for us. So being connected, having that covenant, and communication. Now, I want to speak to somebody who might be in a relationship where it's just not a good place. And if you're in an abusive relationship physically or emotionally, this is not a message that I'm giving to you of sticking it out. This is not just being tough and taking it. So I want you to know that you need to seek out the right resources to get help. And this is different. I'm talking about people who are in a long-term marriage where underlying qualities are healthy, but you might feel a little bit complacent or feel like you just fell out of love, or you may be apathetic or sarcastic or whatever comes in, whatever thoughts come to mind about how you feel about your relationship. But really, the commitment and the love is there. You just don't feel it. That's what this is about. It's about getting through those times where you go up and down in how you feel, and just knowing that no matter what, you're committed.
It sounds like I was in a very similar place then as I am now. In the rest of the episode, I go on to ask some questions that you can ask yourself. And so we'll listen to those, and then I'll tell you how you can get a hold of Classic Marriage and how you can get the free bonuses that I created while I was in the wedding mindset when I created the original episode.
So if you're struggling right now, there's some questions I want you to ask yourself just for personal reflection. How likely is it that I would have these same feelings if I just jumped to another relationship? The reason I ask that question is because sometimes it's just within us that we really need to work on something, and we're projecting our dissatisfaction onto our partner, and it really is something that we can work on.
One of the things I've been able to identify over time since I recorded that episode is that when I feel helpless or I have anxiety or I have fear, that's when I tend to project that onto my husband. And so my reaction isn't really about him as much as about what I'm experiencing, and I don't know what to do with that. And so just identifying those emotions has helped me to process some of those things that I used to react to. He also recognizes that. And so he has been quite patient with me when I go through some of that, to not get defensive and to help me diffuse that a lot, even when I know I'm more worked up than I should be. And so that's just part of the communication that we've talked through, and we know what to do when those tough times come. So your discussions with each other and the questions you ask will really be important to your relationship. And speaking of that, I think this next question is also a key for us to look at.
Another one is, what am I doing to make this relationship better? There have been times in our relationship where I've realized that I'm all focused on me, and then I'm expecting Phil to meet all of my needs. And I'm not thinking about what can I do to make this relationship better? How am I meeting his needs? And so it's a good question to ask on what am I doing to make this relationship better? Another one that I'd like you to ask yourself is, have I quit emotionally? Have I just checked out because I gave up? Another question is, am I ready to do whatever it takes to get back on track? That means, am I ready to talk about some things that I've not talked about before? Am I willing to sacrifice in order to make it work? Am I willing to restructure our schedule or something in order to make some time for us to connect? Whatever that thing is, are you willing to do whatever it takes?
Well, that was more than one question. That was a lot of questions, but they're good ones. We've had to really look at our priorities and our time and ask, would I rather do this other thing than be with my spouse? And that's kind of eye-opening when we look at how we prioritize our time.
Another question that I've asked myself over the years, I've even written it on a piece of paper, and that is just a list of the things I love about my husband. What are things that made you fall in love with your spouse way back in the beginning? What qualities are still there that you sometimes overlook and forget? And so I encourage you to write those down, because for me, it's just a reminder when that little piece of pink paper falls out of my Bible that, oh yeah, even on the days when I don't feel it, these are the things I really love about Phil. And the last one I wanted you to ask yourself is, where are we at with our connectedness, our covenant, and our communication? Which of those areas do we need to focus on first in order to have a strong relationship? Now, for Phil and I, in these 28 years of marriage, there have been times where I thought maybe a counselor would be helpful. And then I think what happens is there's like this shaming that comes along with thinking about getting counseling.
This is a place for us to be thinking about whether couples counseling is even always the most beneficial for a couple. And there are some times where individual counseling is what's needed first. And we don't often focus on that very much. In the Christian circles, we talk a lot about couples counseling. And so sometimes the best thing you can do for healing is to get that individual counseling. One of the things Phil and I did was we attended a marriage workshop for, I don't remember how many weeks it was, but it was really helpful for us because it taught us how to talk about some things we had hidden and just decided we were never going to talk about and that we needed to talk about. So that was really healing for us. One of the things I did with that original episode, and I still do with a lot of episodes of the podcast, is I wanted to give a resource. And sometimes I recommend books, and sometimes I create something like a worksheet or whatever. But at that point, because I was in the middle of showers and hosting people and different things for the weddings, my kids got married within a year of each other. I created these resources and decided to just share the printables that I had made. So you will have access to those in the show notes, in the article that goes along with this on Substack. And one of the things that you'll find that I have to just be fully honest with you is that I really don't love shower games all that much. And yet I find myself hosting events and needing to create things. And so just know that that's a little caveat there. There was a time when I really loved party planning and that kind of thing. And then I think just being a boy mom for so many years took some of that enthusiasm out of me because I didn't need to do that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden when they get married, you're back in the throes of planning showers and stuff like that. So anyway, you will find that I have a couple of printables there, games that you can play, and some ideas. I also had created some cards for writing advice to the bride and groom for my one son's wedding, and those are going to be in the bonuses as well. So I hope you go to Substack, look for Midlife Repurposed, and you'll find this episode there. This episode is sponsored by ClassicMarriageBook.com. Is your marriage a classic? A classic is something of high quality and lasting value. In a marriage, there will be moments where you haul yourselves back to the garage for work. Like a trusty old truck, a classic marriage isn't perfect, but who can put a price tag on it? Even with a few sputters and an occasional stall out, that baby is still moving down the road. Welcome to Real Married Life. In this book, you'll find inspiration, honesty, and self-deprecating humor from the front seat of adventure with Michelle and Phil. You can find more at ClassicMarriageBook.com, and find out how to pick up your copy of the book and the downloadable discussion questions. I hope you enjoyed that look back, 7 years. As you reflect on your own journey together, remember that midlife is a season with many opportunities for growth and deeper connection. I encourage you to embrace the changes, to cherish those shared moments that you have, and to continue to support one another with love and understanding. Your partnership, your classic marriage, is a testament to resilience and commitment. And I pray that it flourishes in the years to come, and that when you look back 7 years from now, that you discover that you're even stronger then than you are now. So God bless you in your marriage. And if you're listening to this on the week that it drops, happy Valentine's Day to you. Thanks for tuning in to Midlife Repurposed. Looking for more inspiration and connection? Dive into Midlife Repurposed on Substack, where you'll find resources, weekly reflections, and a community of like-minded women. Visit midliferepurpose.com to join the conversation and keep the journey going.